Donald Trump says one thing on Monday and something completely different by Friday. 1 week, Washington is flirting with Pakistan for access to Iran. The next week, Trump is talking warmly with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a live phone call arranged by the US ambassador. One moment, India is facing tariff confusion, visa crackdowns, strategic anxiety, and the next, well, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stands at Asia's biggest security summit and calls India, quote unquote, a critical anchor. Not just a partner, not just a friend, an anchor.
And in South Asia, India is a critical anchor to hold the line. A powerful India acting in its own self-interest advances our shared goal of maintaining a balance of power across the region.
So what exactly is going on? Is America drifting away from India? Or is the US national security establishment quietly doubling down on New Delhi, regardless of Trump's mood swings? Well, because here's the reality. Inside Washington today, there are effectively two Americas as far as India is concerned. The first is Trump's very transactional MAGA world. The second, of course, is the Pentagon, State Department strategic establishment. And increasingly, they are not always speaking in the same language. At the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Asia's premier security summit, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made America's strategic thinking crystal clear. India, he said, is a critical anchor in South Asia. The term critical anchor matters because anchors are countries that stabilize regions during geopolitical storms. And right now, the storm has a name. It's called China. The United States sees Beijing's expanding military power across the Indo-Pacific from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean. And Washington increasingly believes that it cannot balance China alone. It needs regional powers. Japan, Australia, and of course, above all, India.
And in South Asia, India is a critical anchor to hold the line. A powerful India acting in its own self-interest advances our shared goal of maintaining a balance of power across the region. India is modernizing its military to carry its share of the security burden, particularly in the Indian Ocean.
Hegseth openly said that a powerful India acting in its own interest actually advances American goals. Now notice his wording carefully. Not India acting as an American ally, not India following Washington's orders, but India becoming stronger for itself. Now, this is a major shift in American strategic thinking. For decades, Washington was uncomfortable with India's strategic autonomy. Today, the Pentagon sees that autonomy as useful because an independent India that pushes back against Chinese dominance still helps maintain regional balance. Even if Delhi never formally joins an American alliance, that's fine. And this is not just diplomatic flattery. The Pentagon's India bet is becoming deeply operational. Hegseth specifically highlighted three areas. First, military modernization. India is rapidly upgrading its armed forces, new fighter jets, new naval platforms, missile systems, drone capabilities. But for Washington, the real value lies in geography. India sits right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and that ocean is becoming one of the most important battlegrounds of the 21st century. Why? Because global trade flows through it. Energy shipments pass through it, and China's navy is increasingly entering it. The US wants India to become the primary balancing power in those waters. Second, logistics and industrial capacity. Now, this is huge. Hegseth specifically praised India's growing ability to repair and maintain military platforms and even support US Navy vessels operating in that region. That means India is slowly becoming part of America's extended defense ecosystem, not formally, but practically. And third, is co-production. This is perhaps the biggest long-term story. Washington is no longer talking only about selling weapons to India. It now wants to build weapons with India. Hegseth even mentioned co-production of Javelin anti-tank systems. That's important because defense co-production creates long-term strategic lock-in. Supply chains become connected, industries become interconnected, military planning becomes coordinated. And once that ecosystem deepens, relationships survive political turbulence, which is exactly why many experts believe that the Pentagon's India policy is now bigger than any one president. And then comes the second pillar of the American establishment, the State Department. Marco Rubio arrived in India last week carrying a very difficult mission: repair trust, because frankly, Indo-US ties had become awkward. Trump was busy handling Middle East crises, trying to build bridges with Xi Jinping, and even leaning on Pakistan diplomatically. That triggered concern in Delhi, as one former Indian diplomat very bluntly put it: if America is sleeping with our enemies. And the friction wasn't just geopolitical. Trade talks were stuck, tariff policies became very chaotic after US court interventions, and Indian professionals were increasingly very nervous about H-1B visa crackdowns and green card hurdles. So Rubio came with a reassurance, big reassurance. He called India one of America's really important strategic alliances.
I've spoken often during my time here over the last few days about the strategic alliance between the United States and India and how important that is for our national interest in the United States. And today's a tangible example. We're two countries who have a strategic interest in ensuring reliable long-term access to critical minerals and supply chains that are important for our innovation economy.
Again, notice the language. Washington deals with many countries, but only a handful are treated as indispensable long-term strategic partners. Rubio was essentially signaling this, that regardless of Trump's unpredictability, the broader US system still sees India as central to America's Asia strategy. But here's where the contradiction begins, because Trump's foreign policy operates transaction by transaction, deal by deal, tariff by tariff, leader by leader. Sometimes confronts China, sometimes negotiates with China, sometimes pressures Pakistan, sometimes engages Pakistan. Now that creates uncertainty for India. Can Delhi fully trust Washington if America's China policy changes every few months? Now that's the core anxiety. But Indian strategists increasingly understand something important. The White House may fluctuate, but the American national security establishment moves slower and thinks long term. And this is where the Quad becomes critical: India, US, Japan, Australia. Interestingly, the Quad is becoming less ideological, more practical. Less speeches, more supply chains. Less grand declarations, more maritime coordination. One of the biggest developments from Rubio's visit was cooperation on critical minerals. Now that may sound boring, it is not. Critical minerals power everything: electric vehicles, missiles, advanced defense systems. Right now, China dominates global supply chains. The Quad's goal is simple: reduce dependence on Beijing, and India is central to that strategy, not just as a market, but as a manufacturing and logistics hub. So where does India stand in all this? Delhi's strategy appears increasingly clear: stay engaged, avoid public confrontation, but don't rush into commitments. India understands that America needs it strategically, and that gives Delhi leverage, especially as global tensions rise across Asia. But India also understands something else. American politics is volatile. Administrations change, policies swing wildly, priorities shift. So Delhi's approach is becoming more pragmatic than emotional. Work with the Pentagon, deepen defense ties, expand technology cooperation, strengthen the Quad, but keep strategic autonomy intact. and that may ultimately define the next phase of Indo-US ties. Not romance, not alliance, not even blind trust, but hard-nosed strategic convergence. Trump may blow hot and cold on India, tariffs may come and go, visa rules may tighten, and Washington's rhetoric may fluctuate with every political season. But beneath the noise, the Pentagon sees India as indispensable. The State Department sees India as essential. And America's long-term strategic machinery increasingly sees India as the balancing power of the Indo-Pacific, which means this relationship is no longer built only on personalities. It is now built on geopolitics. And geopolitics outlasts politics every single time.